The Chicago Bulls started off some changes yesterday when they made changes to their coaching staff, leading many Bulls fans to ask, is this the only change that's going to happen? Are the Chicago Bulls missing the point yet again? Are they using this as a smokescreen where they really should have made other changes to the coaching staff? We're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're also going to talk about Coby White missing out on Most Improved Player of the Year, and what are the Bulls' draft needs going into the draft? We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And the Chicago Bulls made changes in their coaching staff, if I could talk correctly today. They made changes in that coaching staff late yesterday, right before kind of the playoff game started. We did drop an emergency episode on it. You guys may have listened or watched it. Regardless of that, I got some things I need to clarify on that as well. But it seems like this was, as far as Mo Cheeks, this was a decision that Mo Cheeks made. That Billy Donovan kind of defaults to Mo Cheeks. This is per Casey Johnson when it comes to decisions on his future because of the respect that Billy Donovan has for Mo Cheeks. So this was a decision for Mo Cheeks to move away from a full-time role on the bench. He's still within the Bulls organization. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he takes on more of a trainer, mentor type role, something like that behind the scenes. But you're not going to see him on Billy Donovan's bench anymore. But he still will be with the franchise, and it was totally his call. And so on top of Mo Cheeks leaving, Chris Fleming also left, which has led a lot of Bulls fans to ask why Chris Fleming of all people. And I've always said a lot of Bulls fans romanticize the 8-9 game winning streak. I can't remember which one it was that we went on way back in the 2020-21 season. And, people look at that and say, well, Chris Fleming did that, really kind of overlooking the fact that, well, he was the coach for half that streak. And then, he was the coach out there, and he did make some really good adjustments. It was still Billy Donovan's game plan. Billy Donovan was in the coaching room on Zoom. He was coming up with the game plans for each one of those games. And that's not to in any way take away from the assistant that Chris Fleming is. He's been on the list for the last few years on that GM and coaches list of coaches that people think would make a pretty damn good head coach in the NBA. So there is that around Chris Fleming, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe with Mo Cheeks leaving there, it opened up Billy Donovan to look at some other things. Now again, not reporting on this, I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Fleming also maybe made that decision as well to leave, because he does eventually want a head coaching job, and being on the sinking ship, or a ship that's been sinking with the Chicago Bulls, may not have been the best for kind of his view around the league. And maybe just wanting some new adventures as well, right? Wanting a new challenge, going to a new staff, maybe for Chris Fleming. We'll see what the future holds for him. With the way that he has been viewed around the league, I would not be surprised at all if he does land on another team shortly after the season ends. Look out for Chris Fleming there if you want. Pat, the designer, my co-host over on Locked On Bulls, mentioned how I wonder if Chris Fleming getting away is going to be something that bites us in our ass later down the road. And, maybe not even in the first year, maybe not even 2 years. Maybe we're looking at 3-4 years down the road, and Chris Fleming eventually does get that head coaching position, and maybe he does thrive in that head coaching position. But, I don't wish any bad upon Chris Fleming or anybody in that matter. The Bulls did need some changes, and, this is the first thing that they can change right now. And so while the change, again, seems like it was kind of started by Mo Cheeks' decision, because, change is kind of always forced upon the Bulls rather than being kind of more aggressive on it, it's changed nonetheless. So with this change, John Bryant is going to be moving up his role. He's moving up the bench. This is a guy, and I misquoted it yesterday. I said that he was the coach of the G League team. He was actually the coach of the Summer League team, not the G League team. I had that wrong. Got to correct myself on that one. But John Bryant is moving up in a role, going to have an increased voice on that bench. And then Josh Longstaff is in the mix of being the new lead assistant. It was initially reported that he was going to be the new lead assistant. It seems like that's still kind of left open, and that may be determined by kind of the coaching search that Billy Donovan and AK does to fill out the rest of the assistants. So, that's what it says. So they are being promoted regardless. John Longstaff and John Bryant are being promoted to that. But the Bulls now have at least 2 full-time coaching positions that they need to fill. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they go and do that search, especially with the lead assistant role not necessarily being filled yet. They're looking at Longstaff, who is a younger coach that has a lot of cachet around the league as well. But, it'd be interesting to see. And, I talked about this probably a month ago, probably 2-3 weeks ago, something like that, is that, with the Bulls not moving on from Billy Donovan, kind of getting a new set of eyes on this team. And I think bringing in new assistants, especially if they're given voices, especially if they're highly recruited, things like that, to kind of have a new look on both the Bulls offense, the Bulls players, things like that, how things are utilized, can't do nothing but help the Chicago Bulls. Does it fix everything? No. And I see a lot of you guys, and I understand the pessimism around these decisions for sure, and around the team overall, right? This team has definitely earned a pessimistic view upon any move that they make. But I think that, people saying, well, it should have been Billy, it should have been this. Well, regardless, we know that it wasn't going to be Billy, right? Well, they've already said that. Billy Donovan's job was safe. So what can you improve in that? Is bring new assistants. Oh, and I think people also underestimate how important assistant coaches are, right? Like even Mo Cheeks and Chris Fleming as well. Those guys have both been hands-on. Coby White talks a lot about those guys being a part of his development over his course of his career as well. So, assistant coaches matter. I think assistant coaches also do have a lot to say in the video watching, and things that they do in scouting for other teams and preparing the game plan. Now, when it's out there game to game, that's typically a lot of the head coach, but we've even seen assistants like Tom Thibodeau when he was under Doc Rivers, that they have big voices in that too. So I think, this is a change that could have an impact on the back end of things. So if you see the Chicago Bulls maybe use a zone defense more in some different situations, right? Or maybe they do run a different types or little different wrinkles to their offense here and there. That could be because of the assistant coaches, and they're always adding. And because the head coach is so ingrained in what they're doing, day-to-day, the assistant coaches are really the ones that scout, that do some of that look-ahead scouting. They are the ones that come up with some of those preliminary game plans that then the head coach kind of refines. So getting new eyes, new voices in here can have an impact, right? But not saying in any stretch that it has a huge impact, but it does have an impact for your team. It does have an impact in the preparation. It does have an impact in development. So, the Bulls moving on from these coaches and kind of mixing up that coaching staff a little bit, I think is going to be important. It depends on who you add. Yeah, Josh Longstaff and John Bryant have already been in the building. They're going to have increased voices, but looking at who else they bring in as well, outside of it just kind of being a musical chairs type thing, would be interesting to watch during this offseason. But let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Let's get into the next one. So Coby White did not win Most Improved Player of the Year. This is something that, while Tyrese Maxey didn't improve as much as Coby, when you look at the voting, Tyrese Maxey had 51 first-place votes, 18 second-chance votes, and 10 third-chance votes, while Coby White had 32 first votes, 43 second votes, and then 16 thirds. I believe that means that Coby White had more overall votes for him than what Tyrese Maxey did. He finishes with 305 points. Maxey finishes with 319. Keep in mind, voting for Most Improved Player, it happened. It's not released until after the play-in and during the playoffs, but that voting happened before the play-in games even happened. So, it is what it is when it comes down to it. Coby White was close, extremely close, a narrow margin of victory there for Tyrese Maxey. And I do think had Coby not had that huge slump that he had there for a little stretch of the imagination, that, Coby probably would have been even closer, maybe even have won the award. But, was he robbed? No. Was he shunned a little bit? Probably yes, right? But, Coby's going to have a chance to win it again next year. I think even if Coby does improve marginally, like kind of 4 to 5 points per game with the impact and now that having eyes on him, he could very well win that award next year. But outside of it, he's our most improved player. We understand that. And, while people like Jared still try to blame, well, he can't play without, it's stupid. It's just really stupid. But nonetheless, it comes down to it that, that does not take away from the impact that Coby White had this season. It does not take away from the growth that Coby White had this season. He's still got tons of things that he needs to work on. I would love to see Coby White be much more consistent next season for sure, right? Not have those slumps that Coby White had where he has 8-10 games where he plays great in a row, then 4 or 5 where it's questionable, the shooting's bad. But even outside of the scoring, which he's always been a streaky scorer, the leadership role that he stepped into, right? The understanding how to break down defenses a little bit more, the passer that he grew into, the defender, drawing charges at one point, right? So all those things has been great for the role increase of Coby White, and he's definitely been valid for Coby. And, just to see him continually build off that is going to be important in what I look at next year. And the way that we've known from Coby White, he's not going to take this season as just being like, bet I have arrived. Coby White's still going to put in tons of work this offseason. I would not be surprised if Coby White comes back next season a little bit stronger. Him understanding how to draw more fouls is also part of his game that I would love to see him, go through. And then now we do have that player development department in there as well. This is going to be their first full season here with the Chicago Bulls, full off season, I should say, with the Chicago Bulls, and see how they could continue working on Coby. Things like that is going to be important. So, shout out to Coby White for what he's been able to do, how he's grown his game, how he's grown in his role as well, and that vocal leader that it seems like he's turning into. I can't wait to see that and having a season now of him coming into training camp with that voice. Because coming into training camp this year, Coby White, had to prove some things, right? He had to earn his role and show that he was that starting point guard and win that role. He won it. Played 79 games this season, only missed 3, the most of his NBA career by 10. The most he played previous to that he played 74 last season. So there you go. Started the most games in his career. 78 games started as well. So Coby White has increased in role. He's increased in leadership. And I think as the Bulls move towards a new phase, theoretically, based off what AK has said, right, we got to see if it's actually going to happen. But based off what AK has said, Coby White's going to be one of those voices that I think is definitely, hopefully maximized by the Chicago Bulls as well. So that growth from Coby is going to be important. And we'll see what that leads to next season. And maybe next season we're actually talking about Coby White winning a postseason award, being on an all-NBA third team or something like that. Coby White showed a lot last season. He just has to kind of refine what he's done last season. And it's going to be a big season for Coby White, I think, coming up next year. And I think he's going to be one of the Bulls that come into next season with kind of the most expectations around him. And that's a different place for Coby White as well. So really looking forward to that for Coby White. So, but let me know your guys' thoughts on that down below. As always, you guys know I love to hear from you guys when it comes to, this team and everything. We'll get the voicemails in and tell you how to get their thoughts in there. But with that said, we know that we're moving towards the draft. The NBA draft is kind of the next time where we're going to see something from the Chicago Bulls team. It's also going to be kind of the next time that they have to make a serious move, right, and change with this roster, which, we'll see if they make any draft day trades. Not guaranteeing that they will, but they could very well make some trades on draft day that really kind of add to the clarity that we need to see for this roster and, who is going to still be around here, right? But I want to talk about what are the Bulls draft needs, right? And I think some of them are clear. Some of them are a lot less clear. And while the common thought is center for the Chicago Bulls, because it does make sense, there's some really good centers that go in this draft that are athletic, are young, are like things like that. And we'll bring that coverage here to the channel where I'll be covering those teams. But I want to go over it because they could go in a different route. And I think this is determined by either a Zach trade or if they know they're bringing DeMar back or something like that. But center is the biggest need for the Chicago Bulls. I think when you look at the fact that Vooch is clearly on a decline, and while Adama Sanogo killed it in the G League, absolutely killed it by everything that you could want to see from Adama Sanogo in the G League, he did it, right? And I think if the Bulls are going to keep him around, putting him on the actual roster next year is probably the best thing for him to see what he can actually give for this team. I still think that Adama Sanogo's ceiling is probably a bench big, and that's fine, right? There's no slight in that. But when you look at it, if the Bulls can find their next starting center in this draft, which there are some that have that potential, I think that's kind of the first thing that, based off what we know about the team now, right? And unfortunately, when you look at it, like I look at centers like Daniel Gafford, like Derek Lively, who are both surprisingly enough with the Dallas Mavericks, as kind of being based on what the roster construction is right now, that would kind of be the best case scenario for the Chicago Bulls. Now, if the Bulls do somehow get lucky and move into the top 4, there's Alexander Sarrs there right there, who it does project to be more of a type of a modern style big, 7'1", 205 pounds as well, out of France. This is a guy who absolutely can go, kind of drawing comps to Mitchell Robinson. I think he has a higher offensive upside to Mitchell Robinson as well, but he's definitely a guy that, fits that. You want a lob threat, somebody who can protect the paint and do some rim protection for you. I think that's what the Bulls, if they do decide to go center in this draft, that's kind of the type of center that they want to look at, right? A center that can get mobile, that can run with Coby, run with Ayo, be a finisher around the rim, right? And there are some, like I said, a handful of centers that definitely fit that criteria for the Chicago Bulls. Tyler Smith, who is more of a power forward, but Maybe you can play him as a center. He's 7'11". 7'11". Whoa, that would be ridiculous. He's 6'11", 215 pounds. But the thing with Tyler Smith, he played down in the G League. The G League Ignite players haven't always had necessarily the best. You have also centers like a Donovan Clingan who defensively not really bringing a whole lot. Offensively, though, got my boy Korn who calls for Zach Edey. No. Khalil Ware is another one down there as well that can go. Kyle Filipowski is another one that I've talked about for a while. So there are centers in this draft that can fit what the Bulls need. Now, are they going to project to be starting level centers? That's up to AK and Eversley to do their evaluation and really take a look at. This is actually not one of those. This is one of those drafts where I would have really liked the Bulls to have a second round pick in this one because there's some good picks in the second round. I don't know if the Bulls are going to spend any capital to get a second round pick in this year's draft, but we'll see. So there are that. The Bulls can go out and find kind of that more modern center that can run. Think of it kind of like a Tyson Chandler in his prime type center would do really good here. I think that as well for this team because this is a team that does want to get out and run. I don't know if the Bulls necessarily need a center that can stretch the ball. Now, if you can find a modern center that can do some shot blocking, that can rebound, that can maybe stretch the floor a little bit, that would be great for the Chicago Bulls team. But I think those other things are going to kind of matter more to where the Bulls are going. But center, definitely kind of the most, if we're looking at position, then yeah. But then the Bulls also need three-point shooting. Now, the thing with the center position is Nick Claxton is a free agent this offseason. So, and a lot of Bulls fans have been calling for Nick Claxton for a while for the Bulls to take a look at him now. I don't know with Nick Claxton if I view him as a guy that I see as like being this huge center that's just gonna, I don't know, 71 games he started for the Brooklyn Nets last season, averaged basically 12 points and 10 rebounds, 62% shooting from the field. He also averaged 2.1 blocks per game. So theoretically, if the Brooklyn Nets cannot retain Nick Claxton and the Bulls do think that they can get him in free agency. Now, again, we don't have any true cap space, so that would take some huge maneuvering for the Chicago Bulls. You got to have cap space to sign someone. Then maybe that alleviates the Bulls to do some other things with their draft pick, right? And I think even with that, don't overlook the chance that the Bulls may very well look to draft some other things. And so three-point shooting is definitely a big need by the Chicago Bulls team. I think everybody knows it. Everybody sees it, that this Bulls team needs that three-point shooting. And with Nick Claxton being out there in free agency, he's going to command probably about the full mid-level exception to about $15 million. The Bulls can't get him. I know guys are going to bring up Nick Claxton, but it may not be a viable thing there. We'll see. But outside of that, a high-volume three-point shooter or scorer, right? Especially if the Bulls do move on from DeMar, can't retain him. I think getting three-point shooting around this team is going to be hugely important. Now, what's some of the knocks against going after three-point shooting in this draft? I think Arnulop, if you do view him as having a bigger role, Julian Phillips was rounding out a lot better for you. Maybe you're looking at that. Coby, Io grew as three-point shooters as well. Maybe you're looking at with increased roles and another season of off-season of work and some changes to your team. Maybe you can get that. I don't think the Bulls are ever going to be this top of the league three-point shooting, but you do want to get around to just be a more respectable team from three. And so three-point shooting, high-volume three-point shooting could be something that the Bulls also look at in this upcoming draft. We'll see what happens with that one. And defense, right? We need more defenders. The Bulls, that's something that we have not talked a lot about, and that's on me. I haven't talked a lot about it. The Bulls went from being a top 10 defense in the league the last couple of years to we have completely and utterly fallen off. I believe this season we were, 22nd defensively, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to try to do some quick looking up on that. But that's a big fall off for the Chicago Bulls, who are usually in the top half, top third of the league as far as defense. And so, getting some defensive players in here as well is going to be a thing. Now, that can be addressed, of course, in the offseason, in free agency, or with your moves. But that's really what I look at as the Bulls kind of focusing on. And so, some of the players that we'll look at, of course, is going to be centers. That's probably going to be the first position group after the lottery. I don't really do a lot of breakdowns until we know exactly where the Bulls are gonna draft at. So, how the lottery goes is kind of determine some of that for me. But the Bulls, while this isn't a deep draft as far as superstar talent, right? We know that. This is still a draft where you can still get some really good pieces in. You get some really good role players. And so we're about 3 weeks away from the draft lottery happening. And once that draft lottery goes down, it's going to make that picture a lot more clear for the Bulls and for other teams. And then I will be bringing you guys that content. Don't worry about it. That content is coming. And we'll be looking at the draft. It's going to be some of the first things that we look at. Heavy draft coverage here. If this is your first kind of offseason following Chicago Bulls Central, the way that we do it is that I will go position by position. That's what I start at first is, hey, who are the best centers? Who are the best power forwards? Who are the best small forwards? Who are the best point guards and shooting guards? Even though I doubt the Bulls are going to be looking at point guards and shooting guards, I like to break everything down position by position. Then after I do position by position, I'll go and do some specific analysis right on specific players saying, hey, this is the player that the Bulls can do on. Let's play some tape. So we'll get that deep draft analysis here. I love doing that. It's always fun to be able to break that down for the Bulls fans. And so we'll be getting that. You get some of the most comprehensive draft coverage here. So stay tuned in for that, guys. But that's my time for today, man. I love you guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.